We've got an important question now. What does it mean to be a mainstream Republican? It is the question that some Republicans have been asking in the age of Donald Trump, and increasingly, it seems the answer might be to make incendiary comments about women and members of the LGBTQ community. Just yesterday, former Minnesota Representative Jason Lewis, who in 2012 lamented that men can no longer call women sluts, announced that he is challenging Senator Tina Smith for her seat next year. And in Louisiana, the Republican candidate for governor, Ralph Abraham, is out with a new TV ad this week, making incendiary comments about gender.
As a doctor, I can assure you there are only two genders.
Joining me now, Jennifer Horn, former New Hampshire GOP chairwoman who just resigned from the Log Cabin Republicans, and Governor Christine Todd Whitman is back with me. Jennifer, you decided to leave the Log Cabin Republicans after they endorsed the president specifically because of his LGBTQ policies. But obviously it's more than the president, right? What is the Republican Party to do?
Right. Well, first of all, thank you for having me this morning. It's a pleasure to be with you. And, when the Log Cabin Republicans are, made up of people who have spent decades fighting for civil rights, fighting for equal rights for all Americans, fighting especially for the LGBTQ community. And I just simply could not remain and could stand by an organization that endorsed a president whose record is so abysmally poor on these issues, whether it's the LGBTQ community or any other group of people in our country who has ever had to fight for inclusion and fight for recognition. This president has been awful on these issues of freedom and equality and inclusion. And I just want to say, I don't think that mainstream Republicans are represented by this president or by those Republicans who have, gathered so closely to him. I think there are millions of Republicans across the country, just like myself, just like Governor Todd Whitman, who feel the same way that we do. And,
but you
and
stood up. You stood up and you took
leadership.
Action. Is it incumbent upon real, if I can use this phrase,
Yep.
real mainstream Republicans, when you have somebody like Jason Lewis who compares LGBTQ people to rapists, criminals, and polygamists, alleged same-sex parents are harming their children by identifying as LGBTQ, can you be a mainstream Republican and not stand up as you have, as Christy Todd Whitman did, and say that's not okay?
Right. Well, I agree with you 100%. The people must stand up. They must speak. And I hope that when we do it, that it makes it easier for others to do that. And I do genuinely believe that there is sort of a slow rolling movement in that direction. I think as we get closer to the 2020 elections, you're going to see more and more of it. These are despicable statements. The strategy, the political strategy of trying to divide and conquer in this manner, the constant targeting that the transgender community has suffered under this president and those close to him and those who are trying to copy him it's untenable. It's truly un-American. And absolutely, we need more people to join us. We need people to stand up and say what's true, that this president is a divisive, destructive force against the American democracy that we all hold so dear. And frankly, Chris, we are long past the time when we need our elected Republicans, especially in the Senate, a body that we look to for leadership, to come together and stand up and be a force against the worst instincts of this president.
So, Governor, you did that. You stood up to your party. All the way back in 2009, you said we have got to remove the traditional marriage plank from our party platform. 10 years later, who is going to stand up, and have things gotten better or worse?
No, things I think have gotten definitely worse. And I'm hoping that in an ironic way, just the way this president's misogyny has brought so many Democrat women, mostly Democrats, but women, to run for office and get elected, that somehow the way he's behaving now and the way we see these supposed Republicans are representing our party right now, the despicable things that they're saying, will bring more people to the forefront to say, no, this is not who we are. This is not who the Republican Party is. This is not who we are as Americans. We don't believe in this kind of thing. We are strong because we are I don't say we're a melting pot, we're a stew, because everybody can maintain their individual identities and still make the whole greater than the individual parts. That's what's made this country so great.
And yet, as the president tweeted this morning, 94% approval rating with the Republican Party. He has stayed.
But that's his Republican
around.
Party. That's his base. He's always going to keep that base. I know so many people, and I'm sure that the state chairman knows so many people who have dropped out of the Republican Party, who aren't Democrats, but they're registered independents now because they cannot stand the label and all that that implies when they say, I'm a Republican. I choose to stay in the party because I believe in the two-party system and I want to change it from within. I think that's the only way over time, but I think it's a long time away before we bring it back to where it needs to be.
Yes, who is that moderate Republican leader who can stand up, Jennifer? Who is the person who can lead for that huge part of your party, of Christy Todd Whitman's party, who's going to say, this is not what we were founded on. This makes no sense at all. This is not how we survive if you want to make it just simply pragmatic.
Right. Well, listen, there's hundreds out there who could, if they chose to. And to the governor's point, let me just say really quickly, in the state of New Hampshire, we have over 14,000 fewer registered Republicans than we had on Election Day in 2016. In Iowa, it's over 30,000 less. In California, it's over 300,000 fewer people who are now registered as Republicans. That there is this movement away from wanting to be identified with what Donald Trump is all about.
And by the way, can I just interject to Christy Todd Whitman's point? Because I've done a lot of reporting on this. Republicans are having an incredibly difficult time getting women on board to run for office, exactly because of these reasons, while they're flocking, women are flocking to the Democratic Party to run.
That's exactly right. And what is so discouraging about that is that there are so many women out there who embrace the ideas that the Republican Party was founded on, who embrace the core principles that our party has always existed on. What Donald Trump is saying and doing and advancing is in no way connected to what the Republican Party has always been. I feel like you can't say it often enough. He is despicable. What he is doing for, not to our party, what he's doing to our country. Our strength is in our diversity and the ability for, individuals to maintain their own identity and still come together for, to make greater ideals happen. And what he's doing is destroying what it is our country was founded on, not just our party.
It's long-lasting damage, unfortunately. He's allowed people to, it's always been there. We have to admit this. We've always had racism. We've always had biases. We all have biases, whether we like to admit it or not. But it's never been okay to talk about them and to act them out. Now it's okay, and that's very damaging.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.